On one particularly harrowing night, James, in a drunken rage, lashed out at Abigail with such force that he damaged one of her eyes, then forced her to lie at school that she had an accident while playing in the backyard. This incident was just one of many. He often beat her for the. Once upon a time, there lived a man named James. James grew up in a tumultuous household, where anger and conflict were common. His father had a short temper and often lashed out at his family, leaving a lasting impression on young James. As he grew older, James struggled to control his own temper, often finding himself in trouble for his outbursts. Despite his anger issues, James was a hard-working and dedicated man. He eventually put aside his rage when he met Amanda, a kind and patient woman who saw beyond his temper. Her love and understanding helped James find a sense of peace he had never known before. Amanda met James by chance at a local coffee shop, where she noticed his frustration with a faulty coffee machine. She approached him with a smile, offering to help, and their conversation flowed naturally. Despite his initial gruffness, Amanda was drawn to James's vulnerability and determination to be better. Over time, their bond grew stronger, and James found himself letting go of his anger. 4 years into their marriage, they welcomed their daughter, Abigail. James adored his wife and daughter, and his temper became a thing of the past. Their home was filled with love and happiness, and James cherished every moment with his family. Until one fateful day, James came home from work to find his best friend, Arthur, holding Amanda's leg on the living room floor. Arthur was simply helping Amanda with a wound she had sustained, but to James, it appeared as an intimate betrayal. Blinded by rage, James misinterpreted the situation, sparking a series of events that would shatter the peace and love in their home. Despite Amanda and Arthur's attempts to explain, James's fury took over, leading to a violent outburst that drove Amanda away and plunged their once happy family into darkness. "Oh, so this is what both of you do while I'm not around, under my roof," James yelled, his voice shaking with fury. "Before I go into my room and come out, both of you get out of my house before I do something I'll regret." Arthur tried to reason with James. "James, it's not what you think. Amanda hurt herself, and I was just helping her." But Amanda, fearing James's temper, told Arthur to leave. She urged. James stormed into his room, his mind clouded with anger. When he emerged, he was holding a large wooden stick. Without listening to any explanations, he rushed at Amanda and started attacking her. Their 6-year-old daughter, Abigail, ran out of her room, screaming, "Mommy, Daddy, please stop hurting Mommy." Her cries momentarily halted James, giving Amanda a chance to escape. She ran out of the house, terrified. Amanda fled into the night, leaving Abigail behind. The little girl watched her mother disappear, confused and heartbroken. Though Amanda tried several times to retrieve Abigail, she was met with James's fists. Each attempt ended in violence and threats, leaving Amanda bruised and desperate. After several months of this, Amanda decided to take a bold step. She planned to take Abigail out of school early and escape. However, at the entrance of the school, James cornered her, shouting accusations. He alerted the school authorities and claimed that Amanda, who had abandoned the daughter, was there to kidnap her. Without hearing Amanda's side of the story, the authorities ordered her to leave, warning that if she wanted custody, she would have to go to court since she had abandoned Abigail for over a year. Through tears, Amanda begged them to listen, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. James, with a sense of satisfaction, mocked Amanda's tears with a cruel smile as Abigail cried and reached out for her mother's hands. James dragged her away, ignoring her cries, and headed home, leaving Amanda heartbroken and helpless. From that day on, Abigail never saw her mother again. After the incident, James's rage knew no bounds, and he set out to tarnish the reputations of Arthur and Amanda throughout the community. To anyone who would listen, he painted a lurid picture of betrayal and deceit, claiming that Arthur had been having an affair with Amanda and had even kidnapped her. James took it a step further by accusing Arthur of being Abigail's biological father, fueling the community's gossip and suspicion. Arthur, now married to Helen with 2 sons, lived nearby. James warned Abigail never to speak to anyone from Arthur's household, further isolating her. James' relentless slander created a cloud of mistrust, deeply affecting Arthur's life. Arthur's wife, Helen, initially believed James's accusations, which caused significant turmoil in their home. Arguments became frequent as doubts gnawed at Helen, straining their marriage. However, as weeks turned into months, Helen started piecing together the truth. She observed inconsistencies in James's stories and saw the genuine anguish in Arthur's eyes. Gradually, she realized that it was James who had driven Amanda away in a fit of jealous rage, and he had been lying to cover up his own violent actions. Over the course of 10 years with her father, Abigail endured relentless abuse stemming from James's deep-seated bitterness and anger. The turning point came shortly after Amanda's forced departure. James, consumed by resentment, saw Abigail as a constant reminder of his perceived betrayal. His drinking escalated, and with it, his violent tendencies. On many occasions, Abigail would be locked outside the house for minor infractions, left to fend for herself in harsh weather conditions. There were days when she would go without food as a form of punishment. James's verbal abuse was equally devastating, constantly berating her with cruel words and accusations. Abigail's every effort to please him was met with scorn, reinforcing the notion that she could never be good enough in his eyes. The physical abuse worsened as Abigail grew older. On one particularly harrowing night, James, in a drunken rage, lashed out at Abigail with such force that he damaged one of her eyes, then forced her to lie at school that she had an accident while playing in the backyard. This incident was just one of many. He often beat her for the smallest of reasons, blaming her for everything that went wrong in his life. He forbids her from speaking to Arthur's family, threatening severe consequences if she disobeyed. The years of mistreatment left Abigail with deep emotional and physical scars, eroding her self-worth and isolating her from any semblance of a normal childhood. Each day was a battle for survival, living under the constant threat of her father's unpredictable wrath. James's manipulation extended to Abigail's education as well, as he falsely informed her teachers that they would be relocating and that he would be homeschooling her until their departure. This deceitful maneuver allowed him to further isolate Abigail from the outside world, cutting off her lifeline to safety and support. Under the guise of providing her with an education, James exerted greater control over her, ensuring that his reign of terror remained hidden behind closed doors. Meanwhile, Abigail's cries for help fell on deaf ears as her father's facade of normalcy remained unblemished to those outside their home. As the years went by, James's hatred for Abigail only grew, fueled by her resemblance to her mother and his deep-seated bitterness. Abigail, innocent and deprived of her mother's affection, endured James's wrath on a daily basis. She lived in uncertainty, not knowing if her mother was dead or alive, left to face the coldness of her wicked father alone. One night, after completing her chores and errands, Abigail retreated to her bed, seeking refuge from her father's unpredictable temper. But her respite was short-lived as James returned home in a drunken rage, his anger palpable. Despite Abigail's attempt to barricade herself in her room, James forcefully entered, unleashing a violent attack that shattered her sense of security. After waking up the next morning, Abigail lay weak and broken in bed as James hurled insults at her, urging her to go and prepare his breakfast. Through pain and agony, Abigail pulled herself up and stumbled to the kitchen to prepare James's food. Despite her obvious pain, James seemed indifferent, his bitterness and hatred having turned into an obsession. The once battered and abused Abigail was now completely controlled by James. The abuse extended beyond physical harm. James mistreated Abigail verbally, emotionally, and psychologically. She could no longer leave the house without his consent, had no friends, no relatives, no school, and he even controlled what she ate and wore. This continued for months, with each incident chipping away at Abigail's spirit. Her father's presence in her room became a source of constant dread, stripping away her sense of self and safety. The isolation was complete, and Abigail lived in a state of continuous fear and despair. One day, James insisted that Abigail wear some of her mother's old clothes. When she refused, he punished her so severely that she fell ill and couldn't get out of bed for days. Panicked and fearing that he had done serious harm, James tried to take her to the hospital. While dressing her, Abigail woke up, stopping him in his tracks. Although the physical punishments paused momentarily, the mistreatment continued. Abigail often prayed for an escape from her nightmare. With no mother, no family, and no means of escape, she faced this daily torment alone, forced to endure the constant oppression from her father. For several months, James's control over his daughter led to her experiencing multiple pregnancies. Abigail, isolated and without guidance, didn't fully grasp what was happening. James, aware of the signs, reacted harshly, causing her to lose the pregnancies. Over about 8 months, this tragic cycle repeated, resulting in the loss of 3 pregnancies. His obsession with controlling Abigail grew more intense, isolating her further and deepening her trauma. James maintained a facade of normalcy by interacting with neighbors, who often inquired about Abigail. He presented himself as a caring father and a heartbroken husband, claiming Abigail was being homeschooled due to the distress caused by her mother's departure. This facade allowed James to continue his harmful behavior unnoticed, concealing the reality of Abigail's suffering and ensuring his control remained unchallenged. One day, while returning from the store, James witnessed Abigail speaking to a neighbor's son, igniting his fury. He stormed home and lashed out at Abigail, forbidding her from interacting with the boy. His overprotectiveness drew attention from the neighbors, including Arthur, who feared for Abigail's safety. Ignoring Abigail's innocent explanation, James hurled insults and threats at her, escalating to physical violence. He struck her with such force that she lay battered and bruised on the floor, unconscious and unresponsive. In a panic, James fled the scene, leaving Abigail at death's door. Hours later, her classmate, who's the neighbor's son Kyle that James had saw her speaking to on the street, went to check on Abigail as he has always done when he knew James had left for work, to bring Abigail their class homework so she could continue to study. Upon his arrival, he discovered Abigail unconscious in her room. He ran out into the street screaming for help, which some neighbors aided him, prompting a frantic rush to the hospital. Abigail fought for her life, her battered body revealing the extent of the brutality inflicted upon her. It was while treating her the doctors discovered she was pregnant. The severity of her injuries sparked an investigation, as authorities searched for James, as his number was no longer reachable. As the community grappled with the shocking revelation, Arthur joined the search, determined to uncover what happened to Abigail. As the weeks went by, Abigail remained under the watchful eyes of the doctors who cared for her and hoped for her full recovery. When she finally regained consciousness, the authorities were invited to question her about any details she remembered regarding her attack and to identify who got her pregnant. However, instead of responding to the questions, Abigail broke down in tears, refusing to speak, only looking around the room scared. Realizing that Abigail was terrified, the doctors and authorities decided to call in someone from child welfare to speak to her and try to find out what she was afraid of. Despite their efforts to assure Abigail that she was safe and that her attacker could not harm her, she still refused to speak. The investigation continued, and the search for James intensified, but they had no leads as Abigail remained silent. Arthur frequently visited, offering his assistance and even suggesting to the authorities that they try to locate Abigail's mother, Amanda. He explained how James had lied and manipulated circumstances to forcefully take Abigail away from Amanda, who hadn't been seen since. Arthur believed that if Amanda could be found, Abigail might open up to her mother and reveal the identity of her abuser. 3 months passed, and Abigail's pregnancy progressed. However, medical checks revealed that the baby was not developing properly and likely would not be viable. The doctors needed to terminate the pregnancy for Abigail's safety, as her fractured ribs had not fully healed. Yet, they required consent from a parent, and neither of Abigail's parents could be located. When all hope seemed dim, a call came through that they had located Amanda. Although hesitant to return, fearing James's wrath, Amanda was informed that James had not been seen or heard from in months. She made her way back to the place she once called home, arriving at the hospital with a heavy heart. Seeing her daughter's broken and fragile body laying in the bed, Amanda knelt and begged Abigail for forgiveness, promising never to leave her side again. She explained that she had tried her best to take Abigail away but couldn't fight James, who had the money and influence to ensure she had no access to her daughter. Fearing for her life, Amanda had been forced to run. As mother and daughter embraced and cried, Amanda asked Abigail to tell her who had done this to her. Through her tears, Abigail revealed that it was James, her father, who had been beating her since Amanda left. The room fell silent as everyone processed the revelation. While they all knew James had a temper, they never imagined he would harm his own daughter. Abigail recounted how James would attack her each time he came home from work, locking her inside the house, stopping her from attending school, and depriving her of food for the smallest infractions. She described the day she was returning from the store when her classmate and neighbor Kyle stopped her to ask why she had stopped going to school. Her father saw them together, beat her upon returning home, and she later woke up in the hospital. Tears flowed freely as Amanda held Abigail, offering her support and feeling guilty for leaving her in the hands of such a monster. The hunt for James intensified now that they had a clearer picture of his crimes. Everyone who knew him was questioned, including his business associates, friends, and former acquaintances. The two closest people to James, his ex-wife Amanda and his former best friend Arthur, provided information about places James might visit. After extensive searching, they found James a few communities away in an old hillside home where his paternal grandmother had lived before her death several years ago. When authorities arrived to apprehend James, he attempted to escape but was shot in the leg and captured. Disgraced and facing the full extent of the law, James was brought to trial. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and with no remorse, he received the maximum sentence of 45 years in prison. Amanda, present in the courtroom, let out a sigh of relief, feeling as though she had been holding her breath for the past 10 years. She rushed back to the hospital to share the news with Abigail, reassuring her that their nightmare was over and James could never hurt them again. Amanda gave permission for the doctors to terminate Abigail's pregnancy, wanting to give her daughter a chance to heal from the physical trauma inflicted by James. The procedure was successful, and almost a year later, Abigail made a full recovery. Now 16 years old, she was re-enrolled in a new school, and she and Amanda moved away to start a new life. With the help of her mother and counseling, Abigail excelled in her studies and later went on to study law at university. Amanda couldn't have been prouder of her daughter's resilience and achievements. Arthur and his wife Helen kept in touch with Amanda and Abigail, frequently checking in to ensure they were doing well. Kyle, the neighbor's son, and Abigail never lost contact and reunited after their university graduation. 11 years into James's prison sentence, he was stabbed to death during a fight in the prison. No one was held accountable for his death, marking a grim end to his reign of terror. The community, once under the shadow of James's cruelty, began to heal. Amanda and Abigail's bond grew stronger as they built a life free from fear and abuse. Abigail's journey from a victim to a successful lawyer inspired many, showcasing her strength and determination. Amanda found solace in knowing she had finally succeeded in protecting her daughter. Their story became a testament to the power of resilience and the enduring bond between mother and daughter. As Abigail settled into her new life, she began to thrive in her new workspace. Her coworkers admired her dedication and kindness, unaware of the dark past she had overcome. Her focus on her work was unwavering, driven by a desire to help others and prevent the kind of abuse she had endured. With each passing day, She grew stronger and more confident, her past slowly becoming a shadow rather than a defining factor of her identity. Amanda also found new purpose and joy in life. She secured a stable job and built a support network of friends and colleagues who respected and valued her. The trauma of the past was still present, but it no longer dominated her thoughts. She channeled her experiences into advocacy, supporting other women and children who had suffered similar abuses. Her work brought her fulfillment and a sense of justice for what she and Abigail had endured. Years later, Abigail's mother Amanda sat with immense pride for her daughter. Amanda watched with tears of joy as Abigail flourished despite the terrible things that had happened to her at the hands of her father, triumph over adversity. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but they had emerged stronger and closer than ever. Abigail's determination to make a difference was evident in her choice to specialize in family law, helping to protect children and families from the kind of suffering she had experienced. Arthur and Helen continued to be a significant part of their lives, offering unwavering support and friendship. They celebrated Abigail's successes and provided a sense of stability and continuity. Their presence was a reminder of the kindness and goodness that still existed in the world, even in the face of past horrors. The bond between their families deepened, rooted in shared experiences and mutual respect. Despite her painful past, Abigail eventually decided to open her heart to love. At 28, she met Daniel, a kind and compassionate man, at a community outreach event where she was speaking about her experiences. Daniel, a social worker dedicated to helping at-risk youth, was captivated by Abigail's strength and resilience. They began to spend time together, bonding over their shared passion for advocacy and healing. Though hesitant at first, Abigail gradually allowed herself to trust and love Daniel, finding solace in his unwavering support. After 2 years of a loving relationship, Abigail and Daniel married in a beautiful ceremony, celebrating not only their love but also Abigail's journey from victim to survivor. At 30, Abigail found a new chapter of happiness and hope with Daniel by her side. After Abigail and Daniel's wedding, they moved into their new home, beginning a life filled with joy and promise. The years flew by, and before they knew it, 5 years had passed. Despite their efforts to conceive, luck was not on their side. They visited several fertility clinics, hoping for a miracle, but each treatment ended in disappointment. The once happy and loving home they shared slowly became overshadowed by sadness and frustration. As the reality of their struggles set in, Abigail's mind drifted back to her painful past, haunted by the belief that her father's evil actions were the reason for their current heartbreak. This rekindled old wounds, making her question if she would ever escape the shadow of her trauma. In her despair, Abigail went to visit her mother, Amanda, hoping to unload the heavy burden on her heart. Amanda sat down and listened to her daughter's struggles in conceiving, feeling her pain deeply. She encouraged Abigail to have faith, pray, and believe that she would one day have her own children. As Abigail bowed her head in agreement, her mother blessed her and reassured her that she would never be put to shame. Abigail felt much lighter and bid her mother goodbye, then drove back home. Upon arriving, she met Daniel at the door, worried and asking where she had been. She told him not to worry and explained that she had gone to see her mother. Embracing her in a hug, Daniel assured her that they would have their own children in God's time. Abigail smiled, took his hand, and they headed into the kitchen together. After that day, Abigail and her husband Daniel continued with their lives. Abigail remained dedicated to practicing law, tirelessly working to protect vulnerable children and women. Her mother stood by her side every step of the way, and her loving, supportive husband was always there for her. Yet, the years kept rolling by, and still, no child came. Abigail continued to pray, hope, and trust God for her own miracle, longing to be blessed with the title of Mother, and not to be put to shame. Although Daniel never pressured her about their childlessness, Abigail endured sleepless nights, haunted by memories of her difficult past. She often wondered if being childless was her destiny, despite her deep love for children. However, whenever her faith wavered, Daniel reassured her, and she found comfort in his words. One day, her mother visited after having a dream. She told Abigail they needed to see a pastor because she sensed that Abigail was losing hope and succumbing to the fear and anger from her past. Abigail agreed, and they visited the pastor's office. After praying for her, the pastor revealed that Abigail was never meant to be childless and that she would have her own child. He explained that God was healing her body from the inside out, and until that process was complete, she would not be able to conceive. The pastor encouraged her to continue praying, trusting, and believing in God. Renewed in faith, Abigail thanked the pastor and returned home excited to share the news with Daniel, who was thrilled to see his wife smiling again. A year and a half later, while at work, Abigail felt lightheaded and decided to rest. After a few days of feeling the same, Daniel noticed and insisted they visit the hospital. Despite Abigail brushing it off as a minor headache, Daniel's concern led them to seek medical advice. At the hospital, after some tests, Abigail and Daniel were overjoyed to learn they were expecting a baby. Abigail was ecstatic and thanked God and Daniel for standing by her, even when she had begun to lose hope in herself. After several months, Abigail delivered a beautiful baby girl. She and Daniel named the daughter Celeste. As their family and friends gathered to welcome home baby Celeste, the presence of her mother Amanda, her childhood friend Kyle, Uncle Arthur, and his wife Helen brought immense joy. They all came with gifts, celebrating the arrival of the newest family member. With tears of joy, Abigail stood proudly, surrounded by the love and support of the people who meant the world to her. The warmth and happiness in the room were palpable as everyone shared in the joy of this new beginning. Many years passed, and Celeste grew up in a loving home, surrounded by the warmth and support of her family. Abigail and Daniel watched with pride as their daughter blossomed into a kind and talented young woman. Abigail's career in law flourished as she continued to advocate for vulnerable children and women, using her own experiences to make a difference. The once painful memories of her past had transformed into a source of strength and resilience. With her mother's guidance and her husband's unwavering support, Abigail found peace and fulfillment. Her life had come full circle, from a troubled childhood to a joyous adulthood, defined by love, perseverance, and a family that cherished her. As Abigail stood on the porch of the beautiful home, watching Celeste play in the yard, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had overcome her past and built a future filled with hope and happiness, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of love. Abigail's story teaches us invaluable lessons about recognizing the signs of abuse and seeking help when needed. It underscores the importance of not overlooking or excusing unchecked anger, as such emotions can escalate into severe consequences. Abigail's harrowing journey serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us that as a community, we have a responsibility to be vigilant and proactive in addressing the mistreatment of children by neighbors or family members. Her father, James, was able to manipulate and convince an entire community, including the school system, that everything was fine because no one cared enough to investigate his claims. Each time Abigail showed up to school with a new wound, it was dismissed without question. This highlights the critical need for awareness and intervention, emphasizing that turning a blind eye to abuse only perpetuates the cycle of suffering. By learning from Abigail's experiences, we can work towards creating a safer and more compassionate society, where no child has to endure the pain Abigail went through, and where love and support are always within reach. Did this story teach you anything? If so, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your reflections in the comment section below. Your insights could spark meaningful conversations and help others understand the importance of addressing issues like abuse and trauma. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the post notifications bell so you'll be notified every time we post a new video. See you in the next one.